Bulletcast for life.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to another AEW pay-per-view recap with your boy Brandon Tanguma. We're here live on both Curveballs and Chair Shots and the Bulletcast. And if you're listening to it on the Bulletcast, that means this is episode 100 of Under the Radar, and we are here to recap the AEW Dynasty 2025 show. 100 Under the Radars in the books. Who could have seen that coming? I know we've kind of gone through a lot of different iterations of the show. It started off as, recapping kind of the news and notes that we didn't talk about on the Bulletcast because of when we recorded. I'd recap it like after the weekend, and then it evolved into doing the black and gold era of NXT TV recaps, the prime of the my New Japan fandom. I'd cover a lot of the pay-per-views and the shows for that, and as always, the staple was covering those WWE reality shows. And now, it's sparse when we do these under the radar tapings. Now it just has kind of turned into the AEW pay-per-view recaps, but it's been a hell of a time. I mean, I should have checked this before I hit record, but it's been like probably longer than that, like 7-8 years now at this point. Took a little bit of a hiatus a couple years ago, but we're back to do these AEW pay-per-views, and let's jump on into it. So AEW Dynasty, this is the second time they've ran this pay-per-view, taking place in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at the Liacouras Center. Smaller venue. It is the home of the Temple Owls, so it's a college stadium or college arena. Crowd looked great. I don't have the WrestleTix numbers in front of me, but, they did the whole wide shot angle, and it looked very good. AEW, say what you will about their TV crowds. They might be sparse from time to time, but they do sell well for these pay-per-views, and it did definitely show up there. And for this one, I think we're going to start off from the top. Instead of going in chronological order, I think we're going to start with the main event and kind of work our way backwards, because kind of coming into the show, I would say it was a one-match card in terms of like what people were really intrigued and cared about. As always, there's going to be some good matches sprinkled throughout, but I think the one big thing was this Jon Moxley versus Swerve Strickland match for the AEW World title in the main event. And as is a topic for a lot of AEW pay-per-views, this show went very long, went over the 4-hour mark. Luckily, being here on the West Coast, that means it ends at around 9:10, 9:15. For those on the East Coast, that's well past midnight for people in the arena. And if they had work the next day, hopefully they don't have to get up too early, because it's probably not going to be fun trying to get out of that arena and getting back home. But, and there's definitely some matches on this card that we could have cut and trimmed the fat of to make this a nice, tight 3-hour, even a 3.5-hour show, if you want to make it that long. But, Jon Moxley and Swerve Strickland. Another reason why the show went really long, they had back-to-back half-hour matches, including this main event, 31 minutes and 35 seconds this one clocked in at. And interesting start to the match where, they've been building up the tension between Swerve and Moxley, and they, instead of, come out brawling and kind of swinging wildly like you would expect these characters to do, no, they just kind of chain wrestled for the first 5 minutes of the match, and it was kind of interesting. Even I think Taz pointed out, wow, I'm surprised they're doing this. They're wrestling like this or starting the match like this after everything that's been going on, which I completely agree, but it also makes sense now looking back that they were going to go over 30 minutes, so they were probably pacing themselves, so they didn't have to do, balls to the wall brawling for a long time. But then, it quickly kind of, degraded into the brawl that you would expect it would turn into, and, some other wrestling stuff. And, there was some blood. Swerve got sent well over the announce table. Excalibur got taken out, and we got some biting from Moxley. Moxley pulled out a big old ladder, and Swerve did a Swerve stomp off the ladder through the Spanish announce table, and Swerve was selling his knee, and he landed in a way where it was a possibility that he could have hurt his knee just because it did look kind of awkward and the angle wasn't right so where you could exactly see what was going on. And it was like, uh-oh. If Swerve was going to win, did he just mess his knee up and they have to like call an audible that he's going to lose or he can't even finish the match or what's the case may be, you know, a Finn Balor type situation. But it did seem as though it was just selling and everything should be fine with Swerve. And then the final 5 to 8 minutes of this match turned into full-blown Death Riders bullshit as Hangman Page comes out and he gets up onto the ring apron, gonna tease in a buckshot lariat. Oh my God, is he gonna do it to Swerve? Is he gonna do it to Moxley? Who we're never gonna know, I guess, because then the Death Riders come out and attack Hangman. Hangman gets the better of him. So, you know, Hangman and Swerve teaming up a little bit, not exactly, you know, on purpose, but fending off the Death Riders. And whatchamacallit, Hangman then attacks Moxley, and then he gets beat down from the Death Rider. So then Hangman gets buggered off, and Mirani Shafir gets hit with a cutter from Moxley. And so basically, you know, everyone from the outside is done with. So, okay, we can get down to brass tacks. We can have the Swerve Moxley. We've done the outside interference bullshit. Let's get to the finish. Yeah, Swerve's going to do it. He's going to win. He's got Moxley on the ropes. And then lights out, something AEW I think does way too much of. But, you know, they're in Philadelphia, so they got to pay homage to those ECW days. And who comes out once the lights get turned back on? None other than Matthew and Nicholas. The Young Bucks have returned after a 6-month hiatus, and they hit the BTE trigger. Sorry, not the BTE trigger, the EVP trigger on Swerve. And Moxley did his best Triple H WrestleMania 19 impression as he slowly crawls into the cover. And we also had a ref bump during this match as well. That's why all the shenanigans took place. So the referee finally comes to my boy, Paul Turner. If you've seen my YouTube videos, pulled a 199 Paul Turner. So, you know, he's out here reffing main events. So hopefully that means his card value will go from like $250 to $3. And that's not $250. That's $2.50. But I digress. But yeah, so Jon Moxley gets into the cover. 1, 2, 3, bam. Moxley retains and is still the AEW World Champion. What does this all mean? I was saying in my preview that I feel as though it was Swerve's time. Not because, you know, Swerve is this on-fire, can't-miss, top-tier babyface right now, but mainly because the Moxley Death Rider storyline just is not clicking, and I think he just got to get it out of the main event picture. And AEW's been producing good television, and I think they're kind of on the upswing a little bit, but that's kind of in, you know, still despite what's been going on with the Death Rider stuff that has not been clicking, in my opinion. But they're going to continue with it. And is this them set in their ways of them having a plan in place for this, and they are going to see it out to the end if that is Darby Allin? You know, they have the Owen Hart Cup set for you know, the winner facing the champion at All In Texas in July. There is a wild card out there, but all signs pointing to Darby Allin is on the verge of climbing Mount Everest, so I don't think it's going to be Darby Allin. So what is that main event match, or what is that, you know, All In Texas world title match? Is it just Will Ospreay versus Jon Moxley, and that's the championship match, and Will Ospreay gets his crowning moment in Texas instead of, you know, in Wembley last year or whenever they go back to London? But you know, it's interesting. It's intriguing to see what they do. You know, Young Bucks, when they left 6 months ago, they were not in a good spot. They were kind of on the verge of go-away heat with a lot of people, to where their character work was not great. Their wrestling was okay, but, you know, they're getting older now, so it wasn't up to the same levels of early/pre AEW Young Bucks. And the whole, the whole inception of this Death Rider storyline was Jon Moxley talking about, you know, a greater plan, and talking about, you know, getting rid of all these people, you know, getting rid of the toxic culture or whatever of AEW, when kind of what he was talking about seemed to be like the Young Bucks. Like, if you were to like kind of point at what his jabs were saying, it kind of seemed like he was talking about the Young Bucks. But maybe because of all that, the Young Bucks are going to team up with the Death Riders, and they're going to be, the business end of, they're the Eric Bischoff to the NWO. I don't know. Does this set up Hangman and Swerve having to team up and go against the Young Bucks? Sets up an interesting dynamic with Hangman, where he was and kind of trying to reconnect with the Young Bucks before they left. And then now he's teaming up with a lifelong enemy that he swore he'd never be with ever again. And he's going to have to be with Swerve for whatever reason because the Young Bucks do something dastardly to Hangman. Possibly. But Hangman is in the Owen Hart Tournament. He'll probably get screwed out of that somehow with the Young Bucks. And, here we are. But that was the main event. Match was fine. It was, nothing crazy. I think the match was bloated. It did not have to be 30 minutes. Now, if you cut out some of these other matches, brought it down to a 3-hour plus show, and then I would have been a little less critical of the time of this match. But the finish, it's what they're going to do, and they're going with it. I don't agree with it. I think you just put it on Swerve and you kind of figure your way out by the seat of your pants and kind of can, book on the fly and do something different. But I guess they're riding with the Death Riders, and we'll have to stay tuned and watch Dynamite on Wednesday to see exactly what happens with that. Moving on, then, the penultimate match of the show, and I would say the best match on the show, was the International Championship between Kenny Omega defending against Ricochet and Speedball Mike Bailey. This match also went 31 minutes, and this match was a doozy. Excalibur pointed out that the only time Kenny Omega has wrestled in a singles match with either one of these guys, Ricochet and Speedball, was in PWG, and this match had a PWG triple threat match written all over it. It was fast-paced, intense, high-flying, physical, spotty. All the guys were, getting their shit in. There was no real time to take a deep breath. Just everybody was doing everything all at once. The kind of moment of the match, at least on the internet right now, Ricochet was getting the upper hand on both guys, and so he went over to the commentary desk and he took Tony Schiavone's headset and he starts talking shit. And coming out of frame is a flying Speedball Mike Bailey, and he just kicks him straight in the jaw. So that was a fun little moment there. But in the end, Kenny Omega is the one that gets the win, and a lot of people were saying, Speedball kind of the odd man out here, but no, Omega hits Ricochet with a super one-winged angel to get the win as Speedball is tied up in the Tree of Woe in the corner to get the win. So possibly setting up a Kenny Omega Speedball match later down the road because he didn't lose, but something they are setting up down the road fairly obviously is the Kenny Omega Kazuchika Okada rematch at All In Texas. So after the match, Kenny Omega celebrates, and then that coin drops, and Kazuchika Okada comes out, and they just have a stare down, and they, not so shyly or slyly, pose in front of the All In Texas banner, and so we get that in the background. So clearly, they're setting up a match between those two at the biggest show of the year. Now, is that going to be a unification match? Is it just champion versus champion exhibition? And it's like, you guys all know what these guys did 7-8 years ago, so we don't need the titles on the line. They're just going to go out there and have a fantastic match, even though they're 7-8 years older. Who knows? I'm excited to see what they do and what they can do in that match, because despite what Kenny Omega went through the last year and a half, he still comes out and has fantastic matches every time he is out there, and this one was no exception. It was a phenomenal match, as I said, had that PWG type feel, and could nitpick and say that this match could get cut for time a little bit, but it definitely filled my attention better in the 31 minutes than the the main event did. So that's that. Then should we do it in reverse? I think we'll go in reverse. So then we had the Adam Cole, Daniel Garcia match for the TNT Championship. This one went 15 minutes, 35 seconds. Daniel Garcia defending the TNT title, but he does not retain as Adam Cole gets the win. This one had the stipulation that there was no time limit and no outside interference. which there should be no outside interference with any match, but I digress. Adam Cole gets the win and is the new TNT champion. This was just a solid, straightforward 15-minute wrestling match. Yeah, I mean, nothing really too much to complain, critique, or really dissect. They just kind of had a match. Adam Cole selling his surgically repaired cadavered ankle in the match. And that was basically kind of the story throughout, and Daniel Garcia attacking it. So, a little, not heelish, because, that's all fair game, but the crowd booing Garcia a little bit and kind of siding with Cole at times. And Cole hits the, the boom? Whatever his, knee strike finisher is. And he pinned Garcia. After the fact, Cole shakes Garcia's hand, so they, no bad blood, just a good old-fashioned wrestling match. And Cole gets the win. What does this mean for Adam Cole going forward? The TNT title has kind of been designated as the Collision title because, Moxley in the world title has, been a focal point on Dynamite, and he occasionally might show up on Collision from time to time. But the TNT title definitely has found a home on Collision, which I don't have an issue with. If Adam Cole is going to be, one of the main guys on Collision and is a champion, is wrestling, having, solid matches every other week and has, title defenses once a month or twice a month, I think that's a good selling point for the show. And hopefully Adam Cole can kind of get his sea legs under him and kind of, create some good stories and kind of have a good character. I kind of wish he would leave the Undisputed Kingdom faction, eco center, because I just don't think him with Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly and Matt Taven and Mike Bennett is like a good vibe in terms of it just brings Adam Cole down. Now I'm not saying Adam Cole needs to be in the main events, I'm still kind of not sold on him being that anymore, but it's definitely not helping him being with those other guys. But I don't see them veering off and doing anything different, to be honest. Then we get the ROH World Championship, Chris Jericho defending against Bandito. This was a title versus mask match. This one went 18 minutes and 15 seconds. Why was this on an AEW pay-per-view and not a ROH pay-per-view? No clue, but here we are. And Chris Jericho defeated Bandito after he took a bat and he whacked Bandito with it. Bandito's sister and mother were at ringside, or were in front row seats at ringside, not over the barricade, but there was some work that they did, Chris Jericho taunting them, Bandito embracing them and talking with them a little bit before the match and during the match. So Chris Jericho waxed Bandito with it while the ref had his back turned, and there was some commotion on the outside with Brian Keith and Graffiti. And Chris Jericho pins Bandito, wins. But then Aubrey Edwards, she's bilingual. She talks to the family of Bandito, and they exclaim that Chris Jericho cheated, and he put the bat right behind the turnbuckle, and it's in between the steps and under the ring. And Aubrey Edwards goes and checks, and by golly, there was a bat there. But there's no video evidence and no reasoning for Aubrey to believe that Chris Jericho actually used the bat besides just the placement of the bat. And so then Aubrey talks to the referee, and then they restart the match, and then they wrestle for a couple more minutes, if that, and Bandito hits his finisher and then wins. And wins the ROH Championship. In total, this one went about 18 minutes, 15 seconds. And Bandito wins. Match was okay. And the finish I thought was absolutely stupid. Why couldn't Bandito just beat Chris Jericho? You can do the false finish of him hitting him with the bat and just have Bandito kick out. I don't think that's that crazy. Or something to where Jericho gets caught with the bat. You can do kind of the same thing, but it doesn't involve the nonsense, I thought, of the ending. It's one of those, wouldn't it be cool if this has never been done, so let's do it. And it just sets a bad precedent, because then we have this where the referee, an outside referee, gets swayed to change the finish of a match, while literally in the main event, this could have happened where a referee from the outside could have come up, and like, why wasn't Aubrey Edwards doing the same thing in the main event where she clearly saw, unless she, her assignments were done, so she skedaddled off to the hotel or whatever, so there was no one in the back to tell Paul Turner that the Young Buck came out and attacked Swerve Strickland, so that's why Jon Moxley was able to win. And, it's just one of those things that I did not like this finish whatsoever, as you could tell. I thought it was really stupid and dumb. So there you go. Moving on, we get one of the 3 Owen Hart Tournament matches, the second men's tournament match with Kyle Fletcher and Mark Briscoe. This one went 16-15. This was a really good match. Like, I think to this point, I would say this was the best match on the show, midway through it. And they just went out there, had a hard-hitting, fun match, and Kyle Fletcher hits the top rope brainbuster on Mark Briscoe to get the win, and Kyle Fletcher moves on to the second round. I mean, just good stuff. In total, this, a reoccurring bit here, I think you could have taken all the Owen Hart Tournament matches off this card. There's 3. There was the 2 men's and the 1 women's match. You could have taken that off, and in total, that's going to save 16, 13, 11, or 13, 13. So, almost 40 minutes, damn near, of showtime you could have saved from that. Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where you just put them on television. There's a lot of matches on Dynamite and Collision that don't mean much in terms of stakes because they're just kind of matches that fill time, and one person's going to win and one person's going to lose. And, like, to be honest, all 3 of these matches were that. Like, you knew kind of who was going to win all 3 of those opening round tournament matches. So you could have put those on Dynamite and or Collision, and you could have had the same results. But, Tony Khan likes to fill up these cards, I think, because he has the notion that longer and bigger cards are better, and you're giving the people who pay the $50 in an era where a lot of, most wrestling companies aren't asking you to pay $50 for a premium show like this. So he wants to add on, in total, there were 12 matches, 10 if you disregard the pre-show. So I think that's just kind of how he books, and that's his philosophy on pay-per-view cards, and I don't think it's going to change. Anyways, then we get the AEW Women's World Title match with Timeless Toni Storm defending against Megan Bayne. Luther was in Toni Storm's corner while Penelope Ford was in Bayne's corner. Toni, they did a quick little feature film, as they called it, of Toni doing some, she was obviously kind of parodying Rocky a little bit, but there was her doing all these different things and just like fast cuts and all over the place. And it wasn't anything like mind blown or anything. It was just like a quick little 30-second video. And then Toni Storm comes out. She's in like a boxing garb, so clearly an homage to Rocky, and the announcers were doing all sort of Rocky references. Nigel called Megan Bayne Thunder Lips at one point, which, could go in any direction, but that's kind of Nigel's thing. And this was kind of the standard, big heel overpowers the babyface, and the babyface tries to fight from underneath and gets cut off from time to time. Luther put Penelope Ford on his shoulders and kind of walked her to the back, so they kind of canceled each other out. And I talked about in the pre-show and the preview of like, oh, what's going to happen? What's the finish? Because, Toni just won the title, but Megan Bayne is a fresh new pushed act. You don't kind of want her to lose. And then it just hit me during the middle of the match. I was like, oh yeah, why don't they just do a roll up? Toni can get the win, but clearly Megan doesn't lose anything from it. And that is exactly what happened. Toni was kind of, making a little bit of a comeback, but then Megan Bayne cut her off, and they tussled for a little bit, and Toni Storm hit her with the biggest small package in professional wrestling to win and retain. 15:25 was official time, if I did not say that already. So clearly setting up a rematch, probably at Double or Nothing, where I would say Toni Storm gets the more definitive finish, unless they do something where Megan Bayne, gets the win, or Mariah May comes out of nowhere and costs Toni Storm the title, and they can kind of go and do their own thing. But I feel like we've kind of been there, done that, from the final thing they did at Revolution. But yeah, it was a solid match, and it was just a good story, a story we've seen. So it was really basic, but I thought it was effective as well. Then we got the Trios Championship, the Death Riders defending against Rated FTR. This one went 14-45, and it was, what you'd expect, a good Trios match of, some action back and forth. Wheeler Yuta, the hometown boy, did not get a good reception. The crowd was shitting all over Wheeler Yuta. Anytime he'd do anything, he'd get tagged in. They would just be relentless towards Yuta, and Yuta actually got the win. I forget who he pinned exactly. I think he pinned Dax. I can't remember. Maybe there's no way of finding this out. But Wheeler Yuta definitely did get the pinfall to get the win in this one. So the Death Riders retained, and the story going into this was, Dax was a little frustrated and he was losing his way, and Dax, at a desperation, out of anger, he hits Cope with a pile driver, and then Cash Wheeler is like distraught and is like, "Why would you do this?" And then Dax takes the chairs and he's gonna set up a concerto, but then Cash stops him, and then what does he do? Oh my God! Then he hits Copeland with the concerto, and he pushes Dax over, and this angle was so stupid. Like, once again, right up there with the Bandito thing of, it was a swerve for the sake of a swerve, and like, you could have told the same exact story of Dax and Cash being together, turning on Copeland, without the dumb nonsense of Cash fainting that he's not in line with Dax. Like, there's nothing that is gained from that besides like the one like sort of shock you get in the moment. But after you do such a heavy angle that they did, where they hit, I think in total 3 concertos on, or maybe just 2 concertos on Copeland. They hit 2 pile drivers, so clearly going after the neck. It's a heavy angle. You got the announcers doing their best, like, "Oh my God, this is real voice. Fuck these guys." So no one's going to remember the 10, 20 seconds that Cash was like angry at Dax. They're just going to remember the turn. So why do the swerve in the first place? It makes 0 sense, and it just kind of takes you out of the moment, because it clearly is just a swerve for the sake of a swerve, and it makes it scream that it's fake. And I know we all know it's fake, but can we just have a believable narrative in my professional wrestling? God damn it. Is that so hard to ask? But yeah, FTR are heels now, and now with the return of the Young Bucks, they're heels. With the Hurt Syndicate as strong baby faces, or at least wrestlers, or a team that the crowd likes. I don't know if they're actual baby faces quite yet, but this does set up a strong singles division, or a strong tag team division, and it seems as though Christian is going to be turning babyface against Nick Wayne. So if they can kind of clean up that angle of things, then we can get, Copeland. Copeland comes back in however many months. I don't know if he's filming a movie or something, but obviously he's going to sell this attack. And then Christian can, team up with Copeland, and you probably get Edge and Christian reuniting for the first time in however many years, taking on FTR in Texas. That's probably going to be a fun match. And I think you can get, a good little nostalgia run out of Edge and Christian for, the tail end of 2025 into 2026. So I don't have an issue with, FTR turning per se, because if this does lead to Edge and Christian reuniting, they can kind of do some fun things and, get some juice out of that, because I think Copeland and Christian are better together than Copeland being a singles guy, wrestling, pseudo in the main, sneaking his way into the main event, doing some upper mid-card stuff. And the tag team division desperately needs some star power. So, yeah. Women's Owen Cup tournament match, where we get Mercedes Moné and Julia Hart. This one goes 13 minutes, and Mercedes Moné gets the win. Solid match. I don't know if this would be Julia Hart's best match ever, because I don't exactly got the Rolodex of that, but it was no one really cared, to be honest, for a majority of it. But then kind of the last few minutes, the crowd was kind of turning with Julia to where, Mercedes is the bigger star, so they're going to kind of be with her, I think, in jest, for the most part. But then they tell the story of Monet being the heel and Julia Hart being the babyface, and they did a sequence of both ladies trading their finish or their submission moves back and forth on each other. And then Monet, reverses it on Julia. Julia reverses it on Monet. So then, the crowd get into Julia getting one up on Monet, and then Monet then reverses it back again. So the crowd wants Julia to escape, but she doesn't, and she ends up tapping out. And Monet advances to the semifinals of the Owen Cup tournament. Athena taking on Harley Cameron. So that presumably sets up Athena versus Monet in the semifinals. I don't know what this means for, Texas. Does Athena beat Monet to, give her first singles loss? And then that sets up a rematch down the road. And whoever is the winner of that match is going to probably be the winner. I don't know. But sets up a intriguing match. And I would hope that the Monet Athena match is the main event of a Dynamite. And they can, go 15, 20 minutes. They can actually do something really special. I know they're probably going to have another match down the line, but I think just having those two women on a main event of Dynamite could, prove to the world, especially because Athena hasn't been on main television in quite some time, that she is still very good. Then we get the tag team match for the championship. The Hurt Syndicate defends against the Learning Tree, Big Bill and Brian Keith. This one only goes 11 minutes, and it was pretty straightforward stuff. Crowd definitely loves singing "We Hurt People" with the Hurt Syndicate. MVP was on commentary. Didn't add a ton. He kind of adds some play-by-play and some strategy behind the Hurt Syndicate stuff, but he was also kind of hopping in and out of on headset, then hopping to ringside to talk to the guys, and finish involved MJF at ringside. He was in the front row, and then he attacked Big Bill. And who was the director of this show? Because they had the clear shot of MJF attacking Big Bill, but right before MJF punches Bill with the ring, I think they cut to a different angle where you kind of see what's going on, but the other cameraman is right in front of the other camera, so you can't see exactly what's going on. And then 20 seconds later, they then show you the other angle of the camera, who was 5 feet in front of MJF, to give you the clear view of the angle. So I don't know why they did the quick switch right when the punch happened, but so that incapacitated Big Bill, and shocker, Brian Keith took the pinfall, and the Hurt Syndicate retained the titles. Opening match of the pay-per-view proper was Will Ospreay and Kevin Knight, Owen Hart Tournament match. This one went 13:50. Perfectly fine, solid opener, high-flying, active, fast-paced stuff. You kind of knew what was going to happen. Will Ospreay got the win, and that was that. I understand the real strong point of Will Ospreay's matches is, his calling card. You want to see Will Ospreay in matches, but I do think that you should kind of, hold him back a little bit and kind of don't have Will Ospreay wrestle as much. And I understand this is an Owen Hart Tournament match, so you kind of have to have him wrestle these matches, but just kind of in total, maybe you save this match and don't put it on the pay-per-view and have it be on a Dynamite, not only to save time on the pay-per-view itself, but you can promote, oh my God, Will Ospreay is wrestling. This should be a big deal. And he's going to be in a singles match. Make that one of the clear points of Dynamite. Have, this match and the Mercedes Julia Hart match kind of be the two pillars of, if you had the 3 Owen Hart matches you had on this pay-per-view and have that be on Dynamite, along with the fallout of the Young Bucks and some of the other stuff that was on the show, I think you can have a really solid Dynamite. And they're probably still have, Dynamite would probably be good because I think they are on the upswing in total, but that's just my opinion, that you could have taken these Owen Hart Cup matches off and put them on the main television shows to save some time on these pay-per-views, because by God, they are just way too long. Quickly, pre-show, Anthony Bowens returned, and he answered the open challenge for Max Caster and quickly beat him in 40 seconds. So nice to see Anthony Bowens back. There's that. Trios match. Nick Wayne, Action Andretti, and Leah Rush defeated Top Flight and AR Fox. So there you go. No Big Boom AJ, no Rizzler. The Rizzler was at the Mets game today, so no Big Boom AJ, unfortunately. Overall show was good. I wouldn't say it was a top tier or even like second top tier AEW pay-per-view. You know, if we're giving grades out here, because we used to do grades and sometimes do it over on the Bulletcast, I probably give this, you know, on the AEW curve, like a C+, B- show. This was, as I said, coming into it, it was a one match card, and just like a week ago, it only had like a few matches kind of really advertised, and they really loaded up on those quote unquote filler matches to kind of elongate the card, and everything was good. I think outside of the triple threat match and kind of the Briscoe Fletcher match, nothing was like an outstanding match for what it was. So, AEW last show was Revolution, where that was more of the ensemble. A lot of really good matches, and the main event was not that great. While the main event was solid, and everything else was just kind of fine. So, you know, it's kind of tailored to back-to-back shows here for AEW. But as I said, I think they are going in the right direction overall, despite not being the biggest fan of the Death Riders storyline. You know, Double or Nothing coming up Memorial Day weekend. That is like 6 weeks away. So we got quite a bit of time until that show and all the television that will take place until then. Crowd, for being a Philly crowd, you know, they were live. They were not dead like the LA crowd was at times for the show at Revolution. Obviously, you know, main event, they were up for it, even though it was later than what the show would be in LA. So, you know, but the crowd, as I said, there was nothing really great to get the crowd super hot for, you know, outside of some spots here and there. So overall, you know, solid show. And, we'll do I was going to stop it there, but in true, we'll go old school under the radar. We do have some random news and nuggets. Miro allegedly is going back to WWE. I don't know if he's like officially re-signed, but it seems as though it is a done deal by all things considered. Now, I don't know if this is like a mega game changer. I mean, I don't think it is. I think Miro kind of just slot right back into the mid card where he was, and maybe he is, you know, flirts in the main event if he's going to be like a heel of the month to take on Cody or Jey Uso if he ends up winning the title at WrestleMania. Kevin Owens, he announced his injury on SmackDown. You know, we'll talk a little more about that on the Bulletcast, but it seems as though he's not career ending. It's one of those things that it's going to take time. You know, neck injuries are serious, but it seems as though because they caught it and it didn't do anything further damage, just get the surgery and he should be fine. Anything else, really big? It doesn't seem like it, but so there you go. There's some little news nuggets to end under the radar, just to round out episode 100. Thank you guys for tuning in. Kept it a little bit shorter compared to some of the other ones. I'm not going 45 minutes to almost an hour. Thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, whether you're listening to this on Curveballs and Chair Shots or the Bulletcast, follow us wherever you get your podcast. Follow us on social media, Curveballs and CS on Instagram, the Bulletcast on Instagram and Twitter. Until next time, listen to Curveballs and Chair Shots. Drop a new episode on Saturday. Bulletcast we dropped on Thursday, and you all know when we drop Thursday, Saturday, whenever the hell. I'm rambling. I'm not even drunk. I don't know what I'm talking about, but love you all. Big hugs, tiny kisses. Goodbye, good night, and bang.